You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hey, People Centric leaders, it's Stephanie Anderson, and welcome back to the People Centric Podcast. I have some questions for you today, and I'm just wondering if you've ever experienced any of these things. So, have you ever felt physically and emotionally drained due to the monotony of your work? Have you ever been disengaged from work with an apathetic attitude? Have you ever felt a decrease in your productivity or drive due to a lack of motivation? Maybe it's caused reduced job satisfaction due to feelings of boredom. All of these things can cause depression and decreased self-worth. If any of those statements describe you, you may be suffering from what we call bore-out. Bore-out, not burnout, bore-out, B-O-R-E-O-U-T, which is a chronic disengaged condition at work. And please seek your nearest business consultant or therapeutic provider. Well,
I'm very
thank you for coming to my commercial.
I'm very concerned and I have questions.
Thank you, Diana. Thanks for following along with the bit. If you appreciate my sense of humor, that was my best impression at a medical commercial.
I loved it. I also feel it in my heart. It's deep down.
I was gonna say we could cue the really quick voice. It's like it's told you separately, and it's just surrounding states and cities. People centric, brought to you by, and like not global citizens, and for the rights of 4,000 the partnerships, and then
whoa,
show everything in color after that, right? Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Also, a moment for that, because I always assumed they just sped up the audio when people say that, and apparently there are people like you, Philip Herzog, who can talk that quickly.
That's why Siri gets my words wrong when I voice to text. She can't keep up with me, but that's another time, right?
Impressed by these hidden talents I didn't know any of us had. This is amazing.
My gosh. Yeah. We're not experiencing bore-out at work today, but it's what we want to talk about because, burnout gets a lot of stage time, which rightfully so. And I think that's a term that everybody is really familiar with now. We all understand like what that means. But just in case, the 5-second definition is like, I'm overwhelmed. I have too much. I'm trying to focus on too many things. I'm trying to keep too many plates spinning. And all that's led to me like crashing out, burning out. I just can't do it anymore. But there's another side to this, and that we see this at work, and as we were all talking about it, we've all experienced it at work before as well, is this idea of bore out, which is, they define it as like a state of chronic draining boredom at your job that comes from being understimulated, underutilized, and unchallenged in your job. So I'm just going to open it up for us to talk about, because as we were prepping for this, I was like, we just need to hit record. This is so good of what Diana and Philip were saying about bore out at work. So I'm curious for all of us to start sharing. When have you felt bored out at work, and what happened?
Is that a loaded question? I'm afraid to answer.
But I want your loaded answer, Diana.
As we were prepping for this, I admitted like, yeah, of course I felt bore out. And some of the very crappy things that happened to me is I do sort of get, I don't know if it's toxic, but it is this like sense of I told you so, or why can't everybody else see it the way that I see it? Or man, all of you are kind of slow and dumb. I kind of get this really poor visual of everybody around me. I'm like, I'm smarter and faster than all of you, which sounds really cocky and terrible, but that's how it comes out in me. It's just like, I can run circles around these people, and that's not good. I don't want to be able to do that. I need people around me that can like lift me up and teach me things and develop me. And I'm going to use that word development intentionally because it is one of the things that we say all humans need at work. You need development. You can't just go to work and not find that there. You need that. So yeah, I think for me, it turns into this crappy, like I turned into the worst version of myself. And I'm like, I'm faster, I'm smarter, I'm better. Forget you, you know?
I have thought all of those thoughts before at work. And I like that you kind of zoomed in on like the under challenged piece, because I think it highlights that what we're talking about here isn't just like repetitive tasks, because there are some of us who appreciate like a repetitive task role, and for a lot of people that creates like a sense of like stability or safety. Like, I know what I'm walking into every day. I will fully admit I am not one of those people. Like, that type of job sounds like a little version of my personal hell, is that I have to come in every day and just do the exact same thing over and over and over again. But I am going to acknowledge that that is security for a lot of people. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about feeling like your skills and your potential are being wasted at work, is like, I think how I would define under challenge. And so it's like, it's not stimulating. And at some point, not only is the repetitive not creating any excitement or any creativity, but it starts to feel like meaningless and pointless, because yeah, I'm not being poured into at all. I'm not able to use my skills. I feel like, yeah, my potential is just kind of wasting away here. And I have felt that at work before, for sure, where it was like I came in and I'm like, wow, everything that you asked me to do, I accomplished in like 2 hours. And now I have 6 more hours of being here on the clock, and everybody else looks busy, but I'm not. And it really created, honestly, this deep rooted, like, just like dissatisfaction, not only with my work, but like, I think if you stay there too long, it starts to bleed over into your life, and you start feeling like, I have no control over my life. Like, I don't have control over the direction my life is going. And I'm just on the lazy river, and it's just taking me where it takes me. And everybody else seems happy to be here except for me. And then I start getting those toxic thoughts, like you were saying, Diana, where then I'm like, is everybody else just stupid? Or like, what's happening here? Like, how is it taking you 8 hours to do this? Or how are you feeling this sense of familiar? What's wrong with me that I don't feel quote unquote contentment in this job and everybody else does?
I love what you're sharing too, Steph, kind of that the outflow of what happens. There's a leader I worked with last year who said, I show up to these meetings, and this was an executive. So these are important meetings. A lot of significant discussions are had there. And this person said, I show up to these meetings, and at the start of the meeting, I can write on a Post-it note. Sometimes I do. I write what the solution's going to be at the end of this meeting, what everyone's going to say. And I sit back and I wait. And every time by the end of that meeting, everyone circles back to that spot. And I knew I was right. And I think that's a powerful example of what Boreout is, because then you think, man, one, to the development piece, that's brutal for that leader. I always like to think of all that potential and brain power then that's there. What else you could be doing as a leader? And again, there's a lot of reasons I think why. But my question to this person was like, wow. I was like, what if instead of waiting for the end of the hour so that everyone else could figure that out just on their own, how could you lean in and help them better understand how to get there faster so your meetings could even be more interesting for you? And the look I got was just, I think, the look of someone who has been bored out for a really long time, which was like, what? That's an option? I can do something different? But I think it happens not just to folks that are on front lines, executives, leaders of all different levels. And I love your point, Steph. It's not necessarily a lack of things to do, but kind of that stagnation or languishing in the challenge, the excitement, or the development of doing them.
Yeah. Gosh, that story you shared, Philip, is like such a perfect example of that. And yeah, like, I think about that person just as a human being and how it must feel to like sit in that meeting and have that feeling. Cause I do truly believe that like everybody wants to do a good job. Like you were saying, Diana, everyone wants and needs development. And so I think some of the challenge is like if we feel ourselves starting to not want to do a good job or feeling that stagnation, or you're starting to notice that in your team, what do you do with it? I was thinking like when I've been bored out at a job before, like what are some of the things I did that maybe were like disengaging or a little toxic of like, yeah, like then those are the jobs where like you start playing like solitaire on your computer all day or doing other things to like appear busy, quote unquote, because everybody else looks busy and you're not busy. Or I've done also where like I start coming up with projects for myself because I want to be busy and I want to be challenged. And like my leader is not giving me anything new when I ask. But the problem with that is those projects may or may not be what the company would like me focused on. And so sometimes you hit it out of the park and you bring a solution and they're like, wow, we can't believe you came up with this. And then there were other times where like I got my hand slapped and I kind of got disciplined for working on things that like they didn't want me working on and they felt like were a waste of time and resources. And of course I didn't want to say in the meeting, yeah, but I did all of my other work 1,500 hours ago. And so I just came up with something. So I actually didn't waste any time. Thank you. You're welcome. But that would be very toxic to say. So I didn't say that, but I did think it. So I'm curious of what strategies you always suggest. Maybe let's just start for like an individual and then we'll go to the leader. So if you're an individual and you're feeling bored out at work, what are some things you can do to combat this?
Yeah, that's such a good question because I think a lot of times it's hard to identify until you're way down the road, right? Like I'm an operations person. I like putting in systems that go regularly, right? I like every Monday I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do this thing. It's not about the monotony for me. It's about the lack of stimulation. So I think it's hard to recognize that, especially in a job like mine. Like I'm doing the same job. I'm doing the systems. I'm doing the things that I love. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm cranky and I don't exactly understand why, right? Like, or I'm thinking I told you so a lot, or should have listened to me 6 months ago, right? I think I start to lean towards that a little bit. And I don't know that I ever had a word for it until recently, right? Like until we've had this discussion of like, no, Boreout is a thing. And so I think identifying it is tricky because it's generally high performers. It's generally people who like a lot of work, who like the challenge, right? And so those people tend to continue to grind even during burnout and even during Boreout. And so I think identifying it and just saying what it is probably the first step to saying like, oh, okay, I know what this is. Now I got to figure out what to do with it.
I think that's a powerful point and maybe self-disclosing a little bit more here than I typically do. But, positivity, that's one of my strengths. And yet, if I don't feel, I'll just candidly a little messed up or a little scared or a little unprepared, a little, I think then I feel too settled. So all about growing and building confidence and developing. But if that happens for too long, I think maybe kind of to Diana's point, my version of that would be where I understand the setup really well, whether that's us working with a team and a client for strategic planning or Pathfinder or a listening tour or coaching, whatever those things are, when they all start to feel the same, then I think, well, I've been here before. I've seen this movie 25 times. Like the leader that's like, I can write on the Post-it note where I think this is going to go. So for me, that flag is, I would say just a danger because one, that's not as enjoyable. And two, I will not be showing up well for the people around me if that's the case. So I try to step back a little bit when I see that happen. And it does happen. I probably had that a few times last year, even where there's some seasons where I was like, man, I love my work. And also my Post-it note was right way too often. How can I shake this up a little bit? And then the bad news is when you start to shake it up a little bit, and then you're like, oh crap, I'm really bad at this new thing I'm trying, or now I'm really scared because I did so well at something last week and now this week it's hard. You're like, I'd rather go back to settling. Can we make it easier? But maybe the phrase, and this is only I'm bringing up because a word study that I just looked into, the phrase settling, how also often we use like, I don't want to settle. I don't want to settle for someone. We use it in relationships. We use it in goals. I realized, oh, that's like pioneer language. If you settle too soon, you never get to where you're really trying to go, where you're really trying to push. And so for me, I think a little bit of that is don't settle for where you're doing well and strong now. Don't discount it either. But for me, if I realize I've settled for the post-it note strategy, then I try to step back, take some time for myself to think, okay, where do I need to grow? What's the opportunity in this? And then second, taking it to the people around me. So I've done that with Bethany. I do that with both of you on this call. I think I ask you often at different times, especially when I'm like, man, maybe there's a little of bore out, an early phase of it. I check in and say, hey, where do you say I can grow? And so both of you have been really helpful, instrumental, both, I think, to challenge me and help me dig out of being bore out at times.
Yeah, I love that you said that, Philip, because I think it's something as we were preparing for this episode, all three of us talked about of like, we all are like achiever oriented, growth oriented people, and we all really love learning new things. And so I think like, yeah, a common symptom of bore out is like, if I get that feeling that like, man, yeah, I do have this all figured out, or I'm just solving the same problem over and over again. Or we talked about like, yeah, if I start feeling like I am the smartest person in the room all of the time, that's actually a red flag for me, because I know I am really driven by challenging work. And I think that was something that a mentor early in my career, like helped me give language to, that like, he told me, he was like, yeah, like your drive is challenging work. Like that's what you like most in a job, that if you feel like you can do it with your eyes closed, you're not going to like the job. You want something that pushes you. But I also feel the same as you, Philip, of like, there's a little fear of like going to your boss or leader and saying like, give me more, or I want to try this new thing because what if I'm bad at that? Because right now I am like a top player on the team who doesn't make mistakes and gets a lot of pats on the back. But I also know like inside me, there's something saying like, you need to go to the next mountaintop. Like you need to push for the next thing. You need to grow. And so if I know I have that inner drive, that means I have to work past the fear of that. And so, yeah, for me, I agree with all of the flags and signals both of you have said. I think the action that I have taken in the past is either I have to go to my leader and in a kind way say like, hey, like, I want more challenge. I want to try new things. Can I work on that? Can I try that? I'm looking for growth. I've even found like, when I've gotten new jobs, or I remember even saying this in my interview at People Centric, like this is like, I am motivated by challenging work. And so I am someone who will always look for a new project to work on, who will always look for a new idea for the team. So if that's not what you're looking for in this role, then I might not be the right fit for you. You might not be the right fit for me. So I think I've just like learned to like, kind of, yeah, like push past the fear, or maybe like even the negative voice in my head, and ask for it. Or to also be transparent, like there was one time when I felt really bored out at work that I found a different job, because it just like how they were working was how they wanted to work, and they didn't want to change the way they were doing things. They didn't want to really innovate at the business. They liked the model that they had. They liked what they were doing, and just with the structure of the organization, there wasn't like new mountains for me to climb there, or really new things for me to learn. It would all be out on my own. And I didn't want to do that. So I found something new. But I'm curious, yeah, for both of you, when you felt that bore out, like what did you do to get out of it?
I love your example of talking to your leader and kind of saying, hey, I think I need more of a challenge. And I like that you have the words to identify it, right? I like challenging work. Because I've always said I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And the language that one of my mentors gave me was like, your job does two things for you. You earn and you learn. And so you make money, but you need to be learning. And if you're not learning anything, you need to move on and do something else. So I sort of, those are the words I use of like, hey, I'm earning, but I need to be learning and I'm not. And so I think if you can do a couple of things, right? I have left jobs before because, like you said, they didn't want to stretch it, they didn't want to grow it, they didn't want to change it. So we were misaligned. But in organizations where they do want to grow, they do want to change, they do want to stretch, but I'm feeling like I'm not able to do that, then I've done things like join a run club in my community, right? Like I'm like, okay, I'm going to do something, a bigger goal outside of work because I can't find the goal inside of work. And that helps for a little bit. It does help. But I think you do have to go to your leader and say, here's what I am stuck in. I'm stuck in this thing and I would love to take on more, or I would love to. I have brought projects to leaders and be like, I think this will help if we do this thing. Can we do this thing? I'd like to install this. I'd like to set this up. And sometimes I'm told no, right? But a lot of times if I come and I say, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I want to do, here's the problem it will solve, most leaders do not say no to that. And so I think if you can identify some ways that will bring you that development and bring you that joy and bring you that sort of new challenge and say, I'd like to do these things, I think that can help. So yeah, I don't think it all has to come from work is really what I was getting at before.
I love that.
It can come from, Stephanie, you're making croissants. Do we need to have a conversation about your development at work, right? Like, is that a challenge for you just because, or are you feeling bored out? I'm calling you out.
Oh, what a good question. Yeah. Way to call me out in front of the whole listening audience. But no, here's a fun fact. I decided to really only set fun New Year's goals for myself in 2026. And I love to cook and bake. And so I literally Googled over the holidays, what are some of the hardest things to cook? And croissants came up on the list. And in case you are viewing this on YouTube, I will scoot because at my desk, I have a painting of a croissant. I love croissants, but I never learned how to like make them. And so I decided to do that. And I will say, I'll fully admit of like, I was looking for like a fun new goal and something challenging I could do for myself, not necessarily because I was feeling bored at work. I think I just was feeling like getting to the end of 2025, just a little stagnant in general. And I like to live in a whirlpool instead of like the pond. I just know this about myself. Like I'm a natural risk taker and I like doing those things. And so I was like, okay, well, what are some things I can do that are like safe risks to take? I like so much about my life. I'm not looking to make any big changes to my life and world. But so what are some other risks I could take that would maybe fuel that feeling for me and get the adrenaline going? And so one of them, which I know some of you are laughing to say, get the adrenaline going. So you baked a croissant. I challenge you, go home this weekend and do it. You will never feel so stressed the first time you do it your entire life. I nearly cried the first time they came out of the oven and looked beautiful. It takes 24 hours to do. I digress. But I love that you said that, Diana, because yes, sometimes it does mean like, hey, like if I know I don't want to change my situation, I'm enjoying what I do, I love the people I work with, I like so much, then it's like, yeah, what are some other maybe challenges that tick that part of my brain that is just like screaming, grow, grow, grow at me? Well, I'm curious too, we've kind of talked about individuals, but what if you're a leader and you notice someone on your team who's really talented, they're a high performer, and maybe you notice them starting to disengage a little bit, or you show them, like you see them doing like some of the apathy stuff we talked about, or all of a sudden maybe they're having a little bit of a bad attitude, or honestly, like someone who normally doesn't procrastinate is procrastinating, that they're kind of looking busy, but you've maybe caught them on their phone or doing other things that are not worky things, which we all do, but maybe more than you would normally expect them to do.
Maybe you catch them baking croissants at the company kitchen. Is that what you're suggesting?
Philip, Diana doesn't work in our office. Don't out me.
Yeah, that's right. Stephanie
She's
failed to share.
remote.
She made 3 batches last week, and they were so good. Our whole team was like, "You keep doing that, we will pick up all of your meetings, please, please." I
Um,
mean, yeah, no,
for the
I interrupt.
record, I didn't do it at work, Diana, but we
Just to
do have an
clarify,
oven at our office, and I do make cookies from time to time. But
we
cookies
would
are
love
like a 20-minute task, not a 24-hour. But
Yeah.
thanks a lot, Philip,
And,
for ratting me out.
snacks are engaging, you guys. I know my team, if we are fed, we are happy. So I'm okay with this.
Great.
carrots
I
work.
will add it to my job description so that way it's
Yeah, that's right.
documented.
The monthly croissant
Yeah.
baking. That's really,
Oh,
no bonus needed. That's just the croissants
Okay.
were amazing. They were fantastic.
thank you so
I love
much.
to your question of how do you, and genuinely, the croissants were so good. I would say that in itself is a cure to bore out. Just anyone who receives it, we tried it as a team. They looked the part, they tasted the part. What they say about a duck. If it sounds like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. I was like, man, in the Midwest, Stephanie Anderson made a croissant as good as the croissants I had in France. I mean, it
Oh
was
my
impressive.
gosh.
So I just
I'm
have
going to
to say
send this podcast to my
thank you.
grandma. You guys, she's going
Yeah,
to be so proud. And I'll tell her,
she'll
like,
be
just,
proud.
grandma, she's 90. Scroll past the work stuff, but just listen to this number. Like, we'll get to this point where they talk about my croissants. But
That's, we should have her on. I feel like someone who's lived 90 years on this spinning ball probably has some good advice about bore out. My grandma was 94, and on her 93rd year, she's like, oh man, but there's a lot that's been done. I'm ready to go. She's like, but also, she knew why she was still here. So back to my point of settling, I think if you see a team member where you feel maybe they're unsettled with the boredom around them, your cues, your team pretty well. You're great leaders. If you're listening to this podcast, um, I think it's just that. I think Diana gave a great example to say, hey, how are things going? Hey, you're making croissants, is everything okay at work? Maybe a different ask, an example, but to say, hey, I've noticed something. What's going on? An example of what not a good solution would be. Last year, I was talking with someone who said, hey, we do similar work to People Centric. We work with someone. They had a young leader. They had a young sales guy. He really started to not like his job, and they could tell he was about to leave. They were suspicious. So we, again, not a consulting firm in town, but this person said we worked with them, and the owner of this company said, I'm going to buy this person a Corvette. I'm going to lease a Corvette to this young sales guy, and that's going to help retain him. And I said, how long did you see any change in this person? They're like, yeah, it was great. But like the first 2 months, they really loved it. But then they kind of started going back to that normal bore out thing that was going on, right? They use different words to say that. And I think that's an example of what didn't solve it, right? Buying a sports car for your team, while could be a fun perk, if People Centric wants to get me any kind of fun car, I probably would do a Subaru, something I could, cycle and throw kayaks on. Just
Subaru
throwing
and
that out there.
Volvo people here. That's what
Yeah.
you
Oh,
get.
Volvo with the full sunroof would be perfect. But like that's not the
Maybe a
cure to
Honda.
the problem. Maybe a Honda. I mean, hey, the CRVs are great. I'll take a hybrid, please. But that's not the solution because again, it's that extrinsic fix of here's the shiny thing that will wear out for you when really the bore out is coming from an intrinsic need of growing and being challenged. And so as a leader, I would say if you're going to ask the question, also consider what is within your scope of influence to help them lean into, right? Because if someone opens up and says, hey, actually, yeah, I need to grow, and your follow up is, well, I have nothing for you. This is it. I mean, that could be the honest place, but probably not. So thinking creatively with them then of how to challenge that bore out and keep things moving forward.
Yeah, and I like that there's something to identify it, right? It's hard to look at a really high performing employee and be like, they're not doing what they used to do, or they just seem disengaged, right? Like what happened? And I think a lot of times leaders kind of ignore the high performers because even when the high performers are bored, they're gonna do the work, right? Like they're gonna get it done. They're just gonna be snarky about it. They're gonna be, whatever. They're gonna get it done, right? When I have been bored out, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting it all done in 2 hours, and I'm going and whatever. So it's hard to see that something's happening because the work is still getting done. And so I think being able to kind of identify okay, you seem disengaged, or you seem frustrated or you seem bored. I think nobody wants to say that at work because we are sort of afraid of getting all of the work piled on us when we're already high performers. And so I think it's scary to say like, yeah, I'm bored, because then it's like, well, I can find work for you. Like, no, I need challenging, meaningful work, right? And so I love now having a word for it and being able to identify it, and then also saying, I know you need challenging and meaningful work. What is something you would love to work on?
Ooh,
Just tell
that's
me what
such
it
a
is.
good question.
Yeah. Like, where would you love to see us excel? And where do you see your talents being wasted? Because I think that feeling of being wasted is deep, and it sucks to feel that way. Like, it sucks to feel like your talents just aren't being fully utilized, and that your brain is being drained away by these little piddly things when you can be doing so much more. So yeah, I think just asking, where would you love to see us succeed and what would you love to accomplish, might bring some really cool things.
One
I
final piece I
love
would add to that
those.
too, the language too of earn and learn, or stuff to your point of kind of knowing yourself enough to say challenge is important to me. I think one piece of encouragement in this too is if you step back at your boredom, maybe take some stock also to say like, oh my gosh, was there a point in time when the things that bore me used to excite me? And that could be a sign of growth too. And so while boredom is frustrating, thinking of, okay, what does this mean then? A little bit of what's next, or what could be on this journey, so that when you have that conversation with your leader, especially if they're the kind that will say, okay, great, well then point us in the direction where do you feel wasted? Where can we build this up? You're like, okay, because there's probably a skill that you have today that younger you or earlier you was just dreaming and ready for, which again, that's a good sign. That means you are growing. So just don't let that become wasted potential and plateau. Take some work to roll up your sleeves and consider then, okay, how can I engage leadership around me to keep myself growing?
Oh, I love that. And I would add, maybe even from the leader perspective, like if you have somebody on your team who, to your point, Philip, like now they're coming to you and saying, well, the challenge you gave me it really isn't a challenge anymore. Sometimes you might just need to honestly address like some of the things that are causing boredom in the business that like you might not be able to change, but I think it helps just in a conversation with that high performer for them to understand that you see it too. Like, hey, you did learn that thing really, really fast. We did figure this out maybe faster than we thought we would, but now we're still waiting for these other pieces to fall into place. We're still waiting for maybe X, Y, or Z to happen, or there is maybe some like external or environmental factor that is impacting kind of where the organization can go or how fast you can go toward that. And I think it does help the high performer to hear you acknowledge those things, because again, to that point of like, I think they don't like, we talked about not feeling like you're the smartest person in the room. It helps to know that your leader sees what you see. And even if they can't change it, to just acknowledge like, yeah, like Stephanie, like I see those things too. Here's what is like preventing us from being able to launch that or look at this right now. But I do see that that's something as soon as this happens, or if we can get to this point in the business, then that's something I would love to work on. Because then it casts a vision for that person, kind of to your story, Philip, of like that might help someone stay with the company and not bore out and leave, because they know that you see a future there for them at the company. There's challenging work they could work on. The other thing I'll add to this, and it's a phrase we use often, is great leaders play chess, not checkers. And how I would apply that to this moment is that like you probably shouldn't be treating every single employee the same when it comes to workload distribution. I know a lot of you are focused on it being fair and that everyone should have the exact same amount of work. That sometimes hurts your challenge people. It hurts your high performing people. And Diana, I appreciate that you said it earlier of like, for those of us that are high performers, no, I don't want just all the work dumped on me. And I don't want to look at the person next to me and being like, wow, I'm doing like 2, 3, 4, 5 times as much from them and we're getting paid the same. Like that doesn't feel great. But it's knowing your people and knowing there are people who you can give more to who would like that, who maybe just have a deeper capacity. Like we all have different capacity sizes of what we can handle, at what level we are productive. And also like it's seasonal too. Like we all go through different ebbs and flows. Like I know in my life, there's some times and seasons of my life where I'm like, yes, give me more. I could do twice as much as I'm doing now. And then other seasons, because of things that are going on in my life, I'm like, yeah, I need less. And so think, yeah, chess, not checkers. And every piece is unique and moves differently and can do different things versus like this fairness mindset of I have to give everyone exactly the same thing. Everyone has to have identical workloads.
Yeah. And I think you just touched on one little thing that I also want to make clear. It's not more work, right? Like I don't want more of the same thing I've been doing. So I don't need more clients. I don't need more, whatever. I don't need to make more of the same thing, right? To me, I need a different challenge and I'll take that on. And when I master that, I'll come back for something new. But I think it is don't pile on more work, pile on different work. Give me different work.
That is so well said. And yeah, exactly how I feel, where it's like, yeah, I don't want to take on, like in our business, don't give me like 10 new clients at the same time. If everybody else has 2, that feels like too much. But yeah, maybe I'll take some of the new things. Or if we have a project that feels challenging, like stick me on that one, stick me on what feels hard, and let me try, and let me do that. So, yeah. Well, I think this has been such an interesting topic to discuss with both of you, because you are both high performers, talented growth mindset people. And so this has been such a good conversation. And I think, yeah, something that a lot of people feel at work. But to your point, Diana, like we don't use this term as much as we use burnout. And I do think it is sometimes the reason that high performers will exit an organization. And so I think it's important to identify it in yourself and know what your goals are. And for leaders, like when you have that high performer, to like think about how you can be developing them. How can you give them the right kinds of challenges at work to do, because you don't want them to disengage or become apathetic in those ways. So this was an awesome, awesome topic.
It was. And guys, I wanted to also say that if you thought this was a good topic, if you thought this was helpful, I would love for you to let us know. Let us know. We love it when we get feedback from everybody. If there's topics you want us to do, we'll do them. And I'm going to give a special shout out to one of our listeners that wrote in last week. Her name is Emily. She's in Washington, and she just wrote this great message to us about how the podcast was helpful for her, not just in her career, but also in her life. And it felt really good to hear that the things we put out do make an impact. So we want to continue that. We want to continue making the impact for you. So let us know if we are. Like and share and subscribe. And then also, if there's a topic that you need help with, please let us know. We would love to help you with that. Yeah. Do you want to wrap us up, Stephanie?
Sure. I feel like you just did it so beautifully.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you for being here. We do genuinely hope it was helpful. So shoot us a message and we'll see you back here soon. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.